The evening rush at Bellini's had just begun when Lisa Morgan tied her apron strings for the 5th time that week. The restaurant smelled of garlic bread and expensive perfume, a mix that somehow captured everything about the place. Fancy enough to attract people with money, but not quite fancy enough to keep Lisa from worrying about rent. "Table 7 needs water," called out Tina from behind the bar, "and 11 is getting impatient." Lisa grabbed a pitcher of ice water and nodded. At 38, she'd mastered the art of remembering dozens of small details at once. Who needed extra napkins? Who was allergic to shellfish? Which customers actually meant it when they said the meal was fine? Her feet ached in shoes that were a half size too small, bought on clearance last month. But she kept her steps quick and her smile ready. The front door chimed, and Lisa glanced over to see a group of 6 well-dressed people enter. Their laughter was too loud, their voices carrying across the dimly lit dining room in a way that made several other diners look up from their meals. Robert, the host, rushed to greet them with menus clutched to his chest. "Reservation for Blackwood," announced a tall man at the front of the group. He wore an expensive watch that caught the light as he gestured. "Table should be ready, called ahead." Robert checked his list and nodded quickly. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood, right this way, please." Lisa finished refilling waters at table 7, just as Robert led the group to table 12, her section. She suppressed a sigh. Large groups meant more work, but usually decent tips, though something about the way the tall man had barely looked at Robert made her uneasy. She gave them 2 minutes to settle before approaching with her practiced smile. "Good evening, welcome to Bellini's. My name is Lisa, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start anyone with drinks?" The tall man, Blackwood, looked up at her with the briefest glance. "Bottle of the Castello di Volpaia, 2018 if you have it." "Very good choice," Lisa replied, jotting it down. "And waters all around?" A woman with sleek blonde hair cut in. "Sparkling for me. No ice. Slice of lime." The others chimed in with their preferences. One wanted lemon, another cucumber, one no water at all. Lisa kept her smile fixed as she wrote everything down, aware that they had transformed a simple drink order into a complex task. "I'll be right back with those drinks and to take your appetizer order," she said, turning toward the bar. Behind her, she heard the tall man say something that made the table erupt with laughter. She caught the words, "Probably can't tell the difference between wine and grape juice," as she walked away. Lisa had worked at Bellini's for almost 3 years now. The owner, Mr. Carvello, was in his 70s and ran the place with old-world charm. The restaurant had once been the talk of downtown, but newer, trendier places had stolen much of their business. Still, they had regulars who came for the classic Italian dishes and the warm atmosphere, and they had the piano, a beautiful grand that sat in the corner played nightly by Mr. Carvello's nephew, Anthony. As Lisa prepared the drink orders, Tina leaned over the bar. "Table 12, big spenders? Or big headaches?" Lisa replied. "We'll see." "Blackwood brought clients here last month," Tina said, lowering her voice. "Jack waited on them. Said the guy left exactly 15% calculated to the penny." Lisa arranged the waters on her tray, each with the correct garnish. "Wonderful." When she returned to the table, they were deep in conversation about a business deal. Phrases like quarterly projections and market penetration floated up as she carefully placed each drink. The bottle of wine was presented, opened, and poured without Blackwood doing more than a cursory inspection. "Are you ready to order appetizers?" Lisa asked when everyone had their drinks. "We'll need more time," said Blackwood without looking up from his phone. "Menu's different than last time, smaller. We've updated our selections for the season," Lisa explained. "The chef recommends the burrata with heirloom tomatoes. It's exceptional." A younger man at the table smirked. "Exceptional? At a place like this?" Heat crept up Lisa's neck, but her smile remained steady. "I'll give you a few more minutes then. Here where?" She walked away. Their conversation resumed, now peppered with comments about the restaurant. "Remember when this was the place to be? Decor hasn't changed in a decade. Did you see the waitress's shoes?" Lisa checked on her other tables. a retired couple celebrating their anniversary, a family with well-behaved teenagers, a pair of women having a quiet dinner. Normal people enjoying their meals without making others feel small. When she returned, to table 12 they ordered like people who enjoyed making things difficult. Substitutions, special requests, questions about ingredients followed by dismissive waves when she began to answer. Lisa wrote it all down with the patience that came from years of serving others. "And how is the sea base prepared?" asked the blonde woman. "It's pan-seared with a lemon caper sauce served on a bed of, is it wild-caught or farmed?" "Wild-caught Mediterranean," Lisa answered. "Are you sure about that?" The woman exchanged glances with Blackwood. "Most places claim wild-caught when it's actually farmed." "I can double-check with the chef if you'd like," Lisa offered. "Don't bother," said Blackwood. "She'll have the chicken instead. Less chance of disappointment." The kitchen was busy when Lisa placed their complicated order. Carlos, the head chef, frowned at her ticket. "What is this? No sauce, extra sauce? Sauce on the side?" "Table 12, Lisa explained, as if that would clarify everything. "Ah," Carlos nodded in understanding. "Those types." Lisa juggled her other tables while keeping an eye on 12. Every time she passed, someone would raise a hand for another drink, more bread, extra napkins. Each request came with a subtle reminder that she wasn't quite meeting their standards. When the food arrived, she carefully placed each dish according to her notes. The presentations were beautiful. Carlos took pride in his work, even for difficult customers. "This isn't medium rare," Blackwood said immediately, poking at his steak. "This is medium. Maybe even medium well." Lisa looked at the perfectly pink center of the cut. "I'm sorry it's not to your liking. I'd be happy to have the chef prepare another." "No time," he said with a sigh that suggested this was exactly what he'd expected. "I'll eat it. Just adjust the bill." The woman who'd ordered chicken lifted her fork with suspicion. "Is this free-range?" "Yes, all our poultry is free-range and locally sourced," Lisa confirmed. Was the only response, dripping with doubt. Throughout the meal, Lisa found herself making more trips to table 12 than to all her other tables combined. A fork needed replacing because it had water spots. The red wine was too warm. The white wine was too cold. Each complaint delivered with the casual cruelty of people who saw service workers as props rather than people. Near the end of the main course, Lisa was carrying a tray of desserts to another table when Blackwood stepped back from his chair without looking, bumping into her. She managed to steady the tray, but a glass of water tipped, splashing onto the jacket hanging on his chair. "R.E. You kidding me?" Blackwood's voice rose above the restaurant's gentle hum. "This is Italian wool." "I'm so sorry," Lisa said, setting down the desserts and grabbing napkins. "Let me help." "Don't touch it," he snapped. "You'll make it worse. Is there a manager here?" Robert hurried over, followed by Mr. Carvello, who had emerged from his office at the commotion. The elderly owner took in the scene with calm eyes that had seen decades of restaurant drama. "What seems to be the problem?" Mr. Carvello asked, his Italian accent still noticeable after 50 years in America. "Your waitress just ruined a $2,000 jacket," Blackwood said, holding up the slightly damp garment as evidence. "And it's just the final straw on a night of subpar service." Lisa felt her chest tighten. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not with rent due next week and Tommy's school trip coming up. "It was an accident," she began, but Mr. Carvello raised a hand gently. "Mr. Blackwood, yes, I remember you from last month." The old man smiled. "Accidents happen in restaurants, it's part of dining out." "Not at establishments with proper staff," Blackwood countered. Mr. Carvello looked at Lisa with kind eyes. "Lisa has been with us for years. She's one of our finest." He turned back to Blackwood. "We will of course take care of the cleaning bill for your jacket, and your meal tonight will be on the house." This seemed to mollify Blackwood somewhat, though he made a show of inspecting his jacket before sitting down again. The table resumed their meal, now with the added entertainment of occasionally glancing at Lisa and whispering. As she continued her shift, Lisa felt the weight of embarrassment and worry. Each time she approached table 12, someone would make a comment just loud enough for her to hear. Careful with that plate. Watch out for our clothes. Maybe restaurants should require coordination tests for staff. What they couldn't see was Lisa's life beyond these walls. They didn't know about the piano lessons she'd given up to care for her sick mother years ago, or about her son Tommy, who was showing the same musical talent she once had. They couldn't see the stacks of bills on her kitchen table, or the second job she worked 3 mornings a week cleaning offices. To them, she was just a waitress who had spilled water on an expensive jacket. Someone to mock over dessert and then forget about entirely. Little did they know what would happen when Anthony called in sick later that evening, and Mr. Carvello would ask if anyone could fill in at the piano. Lisa dabbed at the wet spot on Blackwood's expensive jacket, careful not to make eye contact with anyone at the table. She could feel their stares like tiny pinpricks against her skin. "I really am sorry about your jacket," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Mr. Carvello will take care of the cleaning bill." Blackwood waved her away. "Just bring the dessert menus and try not to drop them on us." The table snickered and Lisa retreated to the kitchen. Her cheeks burned, but she'd learned long ago not to let difficult customers see how much their words stung. In the relative safety of the swinging kitchen doors, she took a deep breath and leaned against the wall for a moment. Carlos glanced over from the grill. "You okay?" "Table 12, she replied, as if those 2 words explained everything. "Ah," Carlos nodded, flipping a piece of veal with practiced ease. "Rich people who've forgotten how to be human. We get those sometimes." Lisa managed a small smile. "I've handled worse." "That's because you're tougher than you look," Carlos said, pointing his spatula at her. "My abuela always said waitresses should run the world. They know how to handle chaos with grace." Lisa checked her reflection in the polished surface of a steel refrigerator. She tucked a strand of brown hair behind her ear and straightened her shoulders before grabbing a stack of dessert menus. Back into the fray. At table 12, the conversation had shifted to someone named Henderson who apparently wasn't pulling his weight at the office. Lisa distributed the menus quietly, trying to be invisible. "Coffee for anyone?" she asked. "Espresso," said the blonde woman without looking up. "Double shot." "Same," said Blackwood. "And make sure it's hot this time." Lisa nodded and turned to leave when she felt a tug on her apron. She looked down to see one of the men holding the corner of the black fabric. "There's a stain here," he said, pointing to a tiny red spot that must have happened earlier in her shift. "Marinara?" Before Lisa could answer, another man chuckled. "Maybe she should wear a bib like the rest of us do when we eat spaghetti." Lisa gently pulled her apron free. "I'll get your espressos right away." As she walked toward the coffee station, she heard the blonde woman stage whisper, "Do you think she even knows what espresso means? $10 says she brings regular coffee." Lisa kept walking, her back straight. She'd worked at an upscale coffee shop for 3 years before Bellini's. She could make coffee drinks that would put most baristas to shame, but these people had already decided who she was based on her uniform and sensible shoes. The dining room was starting to thin out as the evening progressed. The retired couple left a generous tip and a warm thank you. The family with teenagers asked her to compliment the chef. Normal, decent people who saw her as a person worthy of basic respect. When Lisa returned with the espressos, perfectly pulled with caramel-colored crema on top, the table ordered a round of desserts, each with special instructions. Extra whipped cream, no nuts, sauce on the side. Lisa wrote it all down with practiced patience. Mr. Carvello emerged from his office again, this time with a concerned expression. He beckoned Lisa over as she passed by on her way to the kitchen. "Anthony just called," he said quietly. "His daughter is running a fever of 103. He can't come in tonight." Lisa glanced at the baby grand piano in the corner. It sat empty, its polished surface reflecting the soft overhead lights. Anthony usually started playing around 9, creating the perfect ambiance for the evening crowd. "That's too bad," Lisa said. "I hope his little girl feels better soon." Mr. Carvello nodded, then looked at Lisa with an odd expression. You know, I've been meaning to ask you something for a while now. He gestured toward an employee bulletin board near the break room. There, partially hidden behind schedule changes and birthday announcements, was a yellowing newspaper clipping. Lisa felt a flutter of recognition. The clipping showed a much younger version of herself seated at a piano, her hands poised above the keys, her face serious in concentration. The headline read, "Local Prodigy Wins Regional Competition." "That's you, isn't it?" Mr. Carvello asked gently. Lisa swallowed. That was a lifetime ago. Carlos found it in an old newspaper when he was wrapping fish. He recognized you right away. Mr. Carvello's eyes were kind. "Why didn't you ever mention you were a pianist?" Lisa shrugged, suddenly feeling exposed. It never seemed important for a waitressing job. Not important? Mr. Carvello sounded genuinely surprised. Music is always important, especially here. Before Lisa could respond, a call from the kitchen pulled her attention away. "Order up for table 9. "We'll talk about this later, Mr. Carvello said with a meaningful look. Lisa delivered the food to table 9, then returned to check on table 12. They were deep in conversation about someone's new vacation home. "And the view from the infinity pool is just spectacular," the blonde woman was saying. "You can see all the way to—" She stopped when Lisa approached. "Finally, we were about to send a search party." "Your desserts will be out shortly," Lisa said. "Can I get you anything else in the meantime?" Blackwood looked around the restaurant, which was now half empty. His gaze landed on the silent piano in the corner. "I thought this place had live music," he said, his tone suggesting this was yet another failure of the establishment. "Our pianist had a family emergency," Lisa explained. "Of course he did," Blackwood smirked. "Everything else has gone wrong tonight. Why not that too?" One of the other men in the group spoke up. "Wasn't there a piano at that steakhouse we went to last week? The one where the guy played that Sinatra song you like?" Blackwood nodded. "Now that was a proper restaurant. Professional staff, excellent pianist." He looked pointedly at Lisa. "Quality all around." Lisa felt a spark of something, not quite anger, but a distant cousin to it. Pride, maybe. She'd spent 15 years of her life dedicated to the piano, before life took a different turn. Her fingers still remembered what it felt like to coax music from those keys. The desserts arrived, saving Lisa from responding. As she carefully placed each plate, Mr. Carvello appeared at her side. "Excuse me," he said to the table with a warm smile. "I hope you're enjoying your evening despite our little accident earlier." Blackwood made a non-committal sound, his mouth full of chocolate mousse. "I couldn't help but overhear that you appreciate live piano music," Mr. Carvello continued. "We're quite proud of our musical tradition here at Bellini's." "Tradition that's apparently on hold tonight," Blackwood replied after swallowing. "Mr. Carvello's smile didn't falter. "Perhaps not. Lisa, would you mind filling in for Anthony tonight?" Lisa nearly dropped the empty tray she was holding. "Mr. Carvello, I don't think—" "Nonsense," the elderly man said with a wink. "I've seen that newspaper article. I know what you can do." The table went quiet, all eyes shifting to Lisa. Then Blackwood let out a short laugh. "The waitress?" he asked incredulously. "You want the waitress to play the piano?" "That would be interesting," the blonde woman said with a smirk. "Does she know any songs besides Happy Birthday?" Lisa felt her face grow hot. It had been years since she'd played for an audience. The last time was at her mother's funeral, where her fingers had barely made it through Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, her mother's favorite piece. "I don't really play anymore," she said quietly. "See?" Blackwood gestured with his fork. "Even she knows better." Something in his dismissive tone made Lisa straighten her spine. All evening, this man and his friends had treated her like she was nothing, a servant barely worth acknowledging except to criticize. They didn't know her. They didn't know that she'd once been accepted to a prestigious music conservatory, or that she'd performed with orchestras, or that critics had once written about her remarkable sensitivity and technical prowess. Mr. Carvello seemed to sense her internal struggle. "Just one song, Lisa, for an old man who misses beautiful music." Lisa looked around the restaurant. The remaining diners were chatting quietly or lingering over coffee. No one was paying attention to her. No one except Table 12, who were watching with amused expectation of her failure. At the back of the dining room near the kitchen, Lisa spotted a familiar face. Tommy, her 16-year-old son, had arrived to walk her home after closing. He worked evenings at the grocery store down the street saving money for college. His shift must have ended early. Tommy raised his eyebrows questioningly. He knew about her past with the piano, had even found her old competition trophies in the closet once. He'd asked her to teach him, but Lisa had enrolled him in proper lessons instead. She couldn't bear to touch the keys back then. But now, with Tommy's encouraging nod and Mr. Carvello's gentle insistence, Lisa found herself walking toward the piano before she could reconsider. The restaurant seemed to grow quieter with each step she took. "This should be good," she heard Blackwood mutter to his table. Lisa adjusted the bench and sat down, feeling oddly calm despite the butterflies in her stomach. The keys were smooth and cool beneath her fingertips as she rested her hands in position. For a moment she wasn't sure what to play. Then, as if her hands remembered what her mind had tried to forget, she began the opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune. The first few measures were tentative, her fingers searching for their former confidence. But by the time she reached the flowing middle section, something had awakened inside her. Years of disciplined practice and natural talent couldn't be erased, only temporarily forgotten. As the final delicate notes faded, Lisa realized the restaurant had fallen completely silent. She kept her eyes closed for a moment, almost afraid to break the spell by looking up. When she finally did, she found every face in the dining room turned toward her, including the stunned expressions of Table 12. Blackwood's mouth hung slightly open, his dessert fork suspended halfway to his lips. Tommy was the first to break the silence with applause, quickly joined by Mr. Carvello and then the rest of the restaurant. The sound washed over Lisa like a warm wave, bringing color to her cheeks and a hesitant smile to her lips. The looks on the faces of Table 12 had transformed from mockery to disbelief. They had spent the evening dismissing her, assuming they knew everything about her based on her uniform. Now they sat in stunned silence, forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the woman who had served their dinner. But this was just the beginning. Lisa flexed her fingers, feeling a long dormant part of herself reawakening. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed this. The keys beneath her fingers, the music flowing through her, the connection with an audience. As the applause died down, she looked to Mr. Carvello, who nodded encouragingly. "Perhaps," he suggested with a knowing smile, "you might play something else for us?" The applause faded, leaving a charged silence in the dining room. Lisa's fingers hovered above the piano keys, muscle memory awakening after years of dormancy. The sensation was both foreign and familiar, like returning to a childhood home after decades away. "Play another," someone called from across the restaurant. Lisa glanced at Mr. Carvello, who nodded encouragingly. Then her eyes found Tommy, her son, leaning against the wall near the kitchen with undisguised pride on his face. She'd forgotten how good this felt, not just playing but being heard. Without announcing her selection, Lisa began to play Chopin's Nocturne in B-flat minor. Unlike the gentle Debussy piece, this composition demanded more, deeper emotion, greater technical skill. Her fingers stretched to reach difficult chords, finding their way across the keys with growing confidence. The restaurant remained silent except for the music. Even the kitchen staff had paused their work, standing in the doorway to listen. Carlos, the head chef, wiped his hands on his apron, his usual brisk movement stilled by the unexpected performance. At Table 12, the group that had spent the evening mocking Lisa sat transfixed. Blackwood's espresso cup remained suspended halfway to his lips, forgotten. The blonde woman had stopped mid-sentence, her perfectly manicured hand frozen in a gesture never completed. As Lisa played, something shifted in the air around her. The weight of the day, the rude customers, the spilled water, the constant need to smile through disrespect, seemed to lift from her shoulders. She sat straighter, her chin raised slightly, her posture transforming as she reclaimed a part of herself, long set aside. When the piece ended, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Several diners rose to their feet. An elderly woman at a corner table dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Lisa acknowledged the response with a small nod, feeling oddly lightheaded. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself this pleasure. "Excuse me." Lisa turned to find Blackwood standing beside the piano. His expression had changed completely, the smug superiority replaced by genuine confusion. "You're actually good," he said, as if accusing her of something. "I mean, really good. Conservatory trained?" Lisa's hands rested in her lap. "Juilliard. A long time ago." The blonde woman had joined him, her critical gaze now curious. "Juilliard? But you're a waitress," Lisa finished for her. "Yes, I'm aware." "I don't understand," Blackwood continued. "Why would someone with your talent be serving tables?" The question hung in the air between them. Lisa considered how to answer. These people had spent hours treating her like she was beneath them, and now they wanted her life story. Part of her wanted to dismiss them as they had dismissed her all evening, but Mr. Carvello was watching, and so was Tommy. This wasn't just about her anymore. "Life happens," she said simply. "Sometimes we take detours from the path we expected to follow." Another member of their group spoke up. "But surely you could teach piano or play professionally. Why waste that kind of talent?" Lisa felt a flicker of the old anger. "I'm not wasting anything. I'm raising my son, paying my bills, and living my life. The fact that it doesn't look impressive to strangers isn't really my concern." The directness of her response seemed to catch them off guard. Blackwood had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "I didn't mean," he began, then stopped. "That came out wrong. I just meant it's surprising." "Life is full of surprises," Lisa said, softening her tone slightly. "Like finding out the waitress you've been mocking all night knows her way around a Chopin nocturne." A few diners who overheard chuckled, and Blackwood's face flushed. The blonde woman tugged at his sleeve, clearly wanting to retreat from the uncomfortable situation. "We should let you get back to playing," she said, her usual confidence wavering. As they turned to leave, Mr. Carvello appeared beside the piano. "Actually, I was hoping Lisa might agree to play for the remainder of the evening. Anthony won't be coming in, and our guests are clearly enjoying the music." He looked at Lisa with hopeful eyes. "We'd adjust your pay, of course." Lisa hesitated. Her shift wasn't over for another hour, and she had tables to attend to, including the now subdued group at table 12. "Robert can cover your tables," Mr. Carvello added, reading her concern, "if you're willing." Tommy had moved closer, and Lisa caught his encouraging nod. "Go for it, Mom," he said quietly. The decision felt bigger than just one night of playing piano. It was about reclaiming something she'd packed away years ago, something she'd convinced herself was a luxury she couldn't afford in a life focused on survival. "I'm a bit rusty," she warned. Mr. Carvello smiled. "You play beautifully. Our guests think so too." As if to confirm his words, a smattering of applause broke out among the diners, along with a few calls of, "Yes, please." And more music. Lisa found herself smiling, a real smile, not the practiced one she wore for customers. "All right then, I suppose Anthony's loss is my gain tonight." Mr. Carvello patted her shoulder. "I'll have Robert take over your section. You just focus on the music." As he walked away, Lisa turned back to the keys, considering what to play next. The weight of the day seemed lighter now, transformed by this unexpected turn of events. She began a light, playful Schubert impromptu that matched her suddenly improved mood. From his spot near the piano, Tommy watched with a mixture of pride and curiosity. He'd heard her play only rarely, usually late at night when she thought he was asleep. Those occasions had been brief, melancholy affairs, as if she couldn't bear to play for too long. This was different. His mother seemed to be growing more confident with each piece, her body language changing, her face more expressive. At table 12, the group had returned to their seats, their conversation now muted and occasionally punctuated by glances toward the piano. Their dessert sat half-eaten, forgotten in the wake of the revelation about their waitress. "I feel like a complete jerk," one of the men muttered. Blackwood nodded slowly. "We all do." "I had no idea." "Does it matter?" the blonde woman asked, though her usual sharp tone was absent. "She's still just a waitress. A waitress who plays better than most professionals I've heard," Blackwood countered, "and we spent the whole night treating her like she was nothing." Their table fell silent again, uncomfortable with the truth of his statement. As the evening progressed, Lisa lost herself in the music. She moved from classical pieces to jazz standards, occasionally taking requests from delighted diners. The restaurant had begun to fill again as word spread about the unexpected performance. People who had finished their meals ordered another round of drinks just to stay longer. Tommy had settled at a small table near the piano, homework spread out before him but largely ignored as he watched his mother transform before his eyes. He'd always known she was talented. There were trophies and old programs stored in boxes at home. But he'd never seen her like this, in her element, confident and radiant. During a brief pause between songs, he leaned forward. "You're amazing, Mom." Lisa's eyes, brighter than he'd seen them in years, met his. "Thank you, honey." "Why did you stop?" he asked, the question he'd always been afraid to voice finally finding its way out. "You're so good." Lisa's smile faltered slightly. It was a complicated question, with an answer that spanned years of struggle, sacrifice, and practical decisions. "When your father left and Grandma got sick, there were bills to pay," she said quietly. "Music doesn't always put food on the table." Tommy nodded, absorbing this piece of family history. He'd been too young to remember his father leaving, barely 4 years old at the time. His grandmother's long illness and eventual death were hazy childhood memories. "But you loved it," he pressed. "You still love it. I can see it." "Yes," Lisa admitted. "I do. Very much." "Then why not go back to it now? I'm old enough." "We're doing okay." Before Lisa could answer, Mr. Carvello approached with a glass of water for her. "Taking a break?" he asked kindly. "Just catching my breath," Lisa replied. "The customers love you," he said, gesturing around the room. "Look how many have stayed past their meals just to listen." It was true. The dining room remained nearly full despite the late hour. Even table 12 was still there, nursing after dinner, drinks and watching her with expressions that had shifted from condescension to something like respect. "I was just asking Mom why she doesn't play professionally," Tommy said to Mr. Carvello. "She's good enough," the old man nodded thoughtfully. "More than good enough, but life is not always so simple, yes?" "No," Tommy agreed. "But it could be better than it is." He looked at his mother directly. "You're always telling me to follow my dreams, but what about yours?" Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. When had her son become so perceptive, so grown up? His question hung in the air, impossible to dismiss yet difficult to answer. She had spent so many years focused on survival, on making sure Tommy had what he needed, that she'd stopped considering what she might want for herself. "It's complicated," she finally said. "Most worthwhile things are," Mr. Carvello agreed. Then with a meaningful look he added, "But perhaps this is an opportunity worth considering. Anthony has been talking about cutting back his hours. His children are young and he wants more time with family." Lisa's eyes widened slightly. "Are you offering me a job?" "Not offering, suggesting," Mr. Carvello clarified. "You clearly have the talent. The question is whether you have the desire." Tommy looked between them, barely containing his excitement. "You could do both, Mom. Wait tables when you need to, play piano when you can." The possibility settled over Lisa like a familiar coat she'd forgotten she owned. Comfortable, warm, fitting in ways she hadn't allowed herself to remember. "I'd need to practice more," she said, already considering the logistics. "It's been years since I played regularly. You sound pretty good to me already," Tommy said. Mr. Carvello nodded in agreement. "Very good. But take time to think about it. No rush." He gestured toward the piano. For tonight, just enjoy playing. As he walked away, Lisa turned to Tommy. Homework finished? He grinned. Almost, but this is more important. Education is always important, she countered automatically. So is happiness, Mom. Tommy's expression grew serious. When was the last time I saw you look this happy? Lisa couldn't answer immediately. Happiness had become such a nebulous concept, something to be found in small moments. Tommy's successes, a rare day off, a particularly good tip. The deep fulfillment she felt right now at the piano was something she had almost forgotten existed. Play something else, Tommy urged, changing the subject. Something you love. Lisa turned back to the keys, considering. Then, with a small smile, she began the opening notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, a challenging piece she had once performed with an orchestra, back when her future seemed limitless. As the powerful chords filled the restaurant, Lisa felt something shifting inside her. Not just the joy of playing again, but something deeper, a sense that perhaps it wasn't too late to reclaim parts of herself she'd set aside. And at table 12, Blackwood and his companions watched in silent awe, their earlier mockery now replaced by a growing realization of how terribly they had misjudged the woman they had spent an evening belittling. The final notes of Rachmaninoff lingered in the air as Lisa's hands came to rest on the keys. The piece had demanded everything from her: technical skill, emotional depth, physical stamina, and she had surprised herself by remembering most of it. There were a few stumbles, places where her fingers couldn't quite keep up with what her mind remembered, but the essence of the music had poured through her. The restaurant erupted in applause louder than before. Several people rose to their feet. An older gentleman near the back wiped tears from his eyes. Lisa felt breathless, almost dizzy. Playing that concerto again after so many years was like having a conversation with her younger self. The girl, who had practiced 6 hours a day, who had dreamed of concert halls and recording contracts, who had never imagined that life could take such unexpected turns. Tommy appeared at her side with a glass of water. "That was incredible, Mom," he said, his voice filled with awe. "I've never heard you play like that before." "I haven't played like that in a very long time," Lisa admitted, taking a grateful sip. Her fingers felt both tired and alive, tingling, with the memory of movement across the keys. Mr. Carvello approached, beaming. "Magnificent," he declared. "Simply magnificent." Before Lisa could respond, a figure appeared beside him. Blackwood, the man who had spent the entire evening treating her with casual disdain. His expression now was unreadable, a mixture of embarrassment and something else Lisa couldn't quite identify. "May I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, his earlier arrogance noticeably absent. Lisa glanced at Tommy, who shrugged slightly. "I'll be right back," she told her son, then followed Blackwood a few steps away from the piano. "That was Rachmaninoff's second concerto," Blackwood said once they were out of earshot. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lisa confirmed. "My mother played piano," he continued, his gaze fixed somewhere over Lisa's shoulder. "Not professionally, but she loved Rachmaninoff. She used to say his music was what emotions would sound like if they could speak." The unexpected personal revelation caught Lisa off guard. "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Blackwood agreed, finally meeting Lisa's eyes. "Look, I owe you an apology. My behavior tonight was inexcusable." Lisa hadn't expected this. She'd served enough wealthy, entitled customers over the years to know that genuine apologies from them were rare as snow in summer. "You're right, it was," she said simply, neither accepting nor rejecting his words. Blackwood looked taken aback, then let out a short laugh. "Direct. I deserve that. Everyone deserves basic respect, Mr. Blackwood, regardless of their job." He nodded slowly. "I know that. Or I should know that." He sighed, running a hand through his carefully styled hair. "The truth is, I've been under tremendous pressure lately. Work issues, personal problems. Not that it excuses anything." "It doesn't," Lisa agreed, but her tone had softened slightly. My colleagues and I, we get caught up in our world. Deals and money and status. Sometimes we forget, he trailed off, searching for words, that the person bringing your espresso is a human being with their own life and story, Lisa suggested. Exactly that, Blackwood admitted. And sometimes that person might even be more talented than you are, just living a different kind of life. Lisa wasn't sure how to respond. Part of her wanted to accept his apology and move on, while another part felt he needed to sit with his discomfort a bit longer. Why did you stop playing? He asked suddenly. Someone with your talent, you could have had a career in music. It was the same question Tommy had asked, but coming from Blackwood, it felt more intrusive. Still, Lisa found herself answering. Life happened, she said. My mother got sick when I was in my second year at Juilliard. She needed full-time care and we couldn't afford both a caregiver and my tuition. Then I met Tommy's father, got married, had Tommy, and when my husband left, there were bills to pay and a child to raise. She shrugged. Music doesn't always keep the lights on. Blackwood listened intently, his expression thoughtful. But you never lost your skill, even after all this time. Some things become part of you, Lisa said. Once the music gets inside you, it never really leaves. Have you ever thought about going back to it? Not necessarily as a concert pianist, but teaching perhaps, or playing professionally in venues like this. Lisa smiled slightly. Funny, everyone seems to be asking me that tonight. Because the talent is obvious, Blackwood said. It seems like such a waste, he stopped himself. I'm sorry, that's presumptuous of me, I don't know your life. No, you don't, Lisa agreed. But you're not entirely wrong either. I've missed it more than I allowed myself to admit. They stood, in silence for a moment, the sounds of the restaurant flowing around them, clinking glasses, murmured conversations, the occasional burst of laughter. I have connections, Blackwood said finally. People who organize events, charity galas, private concerts. If you're interested, I could make some introductions. Lisa regarded him with surprise. Why would you do that? Partly guilt, he admitted honestly. Partly because talent like yours shouldn't be hidden away in a restaurant in the off hours. He paused. Mostly because I was raised better than how I behaved tonight, and my mother would be ashamed of me if she were here. The mention of his mother again made Blackwood seem more human, less the caricature of privilege he'd appeared to be all evening. Lisa found her anger toward him softening despite herself. I appreciate the offer, she said carefully, but my life is complicated. Tommy is my priority and stability matters. I understand, Blackwood said, but the offer stands. No strings attached, no expectations, just an introduction if you want it. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. My personal number is on the back. If you change your mind, call anytime. Lisa accepted the card, tucking it into her apron pocket. Thank you. An awkward silence fell between them until Tommy approached, eyeing Blackwood with suspicion. Everything okay, Mom? Everything's fine, honey, Lisa assured him. Mr. Blackwood was just leaving. Blackwood nodded to Tommy. Your mother is incredibly talented. You must be very proud. I am, Tommy said simply. I always have been. The quiet dignity in her son's voice brought unexpected tears to Lisa's eyes. While she'd been worrying about providing for him, making sure he had opportunities she'd lost, he had apparently been proud of her all along, not for what she once was, but for who she was now. Blackwood seemed to sense the emotional undercurrent. I should get back to my colleagues. Thank you for the beautiful music, and for the lesson in humility. With a final nod to them both, he returned to table 12, where his companions were settling their bill. Lisa turned to Tommy. You okay? Shouldn't I be asking you that? Tommy replied with a half-smile. What did he want? To apologize, Lisa said, and to offer help with music connections. Tommy's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? The same guy who was a total jerk all night? People are complicated, Lisa said, surprising herself with her own capacity for forgiveness. Sometimes they're capable of change, even if it's just for a moment. Mr. Carvello approached again, his hands clasped together excitedly. Lisa, the customers are asking for more music. Would you play just a few more pieces before we close? The clock on the wall showed. It was nearly 11, an hour past when her shift usually ended. Tommy had school tomorrow, and she had an early appointment with Tommy's guidance counselor to discuss college applications. But the piano was calling to her, and the restaurant was still half full of people who had stayed just to listen to her play. Is that okay with you? She asked Tommy. It'll mean a later night than usual. Tommy smiled. Are you kidding? This is the best night ever. I've got my homework done, and watching you play is way better than going home to our empty apartment. Mr. Carvello beamed. Wonderful. And perhaps your son would like something from the kitchen? Carlos made tiramisu today. Tommy's eyes lit up. I wouldn't say no to that. As they spoke, the group from table 12 rose to leave. The blonde woman glanced at Lisa but quickly looked away when their eyes met. The others nodded awkwardly in her direction, their earlier mockery replaced by an uncomfortable awareness of their behavior. Only Blackwood approached, leaving a white envelope on top of the piano. Thank you for the music, he said simply, then joined his companions as they filed out. Lisa opened the envelope after they'd gone. Inside was a generous tip, far more than the cost of their meal, and a note that read, For your son's college fund. No strings attached. You've reminded me that there's more to life than spreadsheets and status. Thank you for that gift. She folded the note carefully and put it back in the envelope, conflicting emotions washing through her. The money would help with Tommy's application fees, maybe even put a dent in first-year expenses if he got into his dream school, yet accepting it felt complicated. What's that? Tommy asked, returning with a massive slice of tiramisu. Just a tip, Lisa said, deciding to tell him the full story later. Ready for some more music? Tommy nodded enthusiastically, settling into a chair near the piano with his dessert. Play something happy, he suggested. Something that sounds like new beginnings. Lisa thought for a moment, then began to play Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. It wasn't a piece she'd perfected in her youth. Her classical training had focused on European composers. But she'd always loved its uniquely American optimism, the way it blended classical structures with jazz freedom. As her fingers found their way through the familiar introduction, Lisa felt something settling within her. Not just the joy of playing again, but a sense of possibility she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The restaurant around her, the patrons listening with rapt attention, Tommy watching proudly from nearby, even Blackwood's unexpected apology and offer, all of it felt like pieces of a new picture forming. For years, she had defined herself by what she had lost or given up. Tonight had reminded her that perhaps it wasn't too late to reclaim parts of herself she'd set aside. The music swelled around her, joyful and complex, as she played not just for the audience but for herself. Each note felt like both a memory and a promise of what had been and what might still be possible. 3 months had passed since that unexpected night at the piano. Lisa wiped down the bar at Bellini's, humming softly to herself as she prepared for the evening ahead. The restaurant had changed, subtle differences that regular customers noticed and newcomers simply accepted as part of its charm. The most obvious change was the piano. Mr. Carvello had replaced the old baby grand with a gleaming new one, positioning it more prominently in the dining room. A small brass plaque on its side read, "For those who remind us that it's never too late to begin again." Lisa glanced at the clock, nearly 6. Soon she would change from her waitress uniform into the simple black dress hanging in Mr. Carvello's office. Friday and Saturday evenings were piano nights now. Wednesdays too, when Anthony couldn't make it because of his daughter's dance recitals. Nervous about tonight? Tina asked, arranging wine glasses on the shelf behind the bar. Lisa shook her head. Not really, just the usual butterflies. Tonight was different from her regular performances. Tonight she would play her own compositions. For the first time, pieces she had written in stolen moments over the past few months, sitting at her old upright piano at home, the one she had kept all these years but rarely touched. The door chimed, and Lisa looked up to see Tommy entering, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt rather than his usual jeans and t-shirt. At 17, he seemed to grow taller every week, his features settling into those of the young man he was becoming. "You're early," Lisa said, smiling at her son. "Wanted to help set up?" Tommy replied, dropping his backpack behind the bar. "And make sure you don't chicken out of playing your own stuff." Lisa rolled her eyes, but Tommy's support meant everything. He had been her biggest cheerleader these past months, encouraging her to accept Mr. Carvello's offer of regular piano nights, helping her practice at home, even recording her playing and creating a small social media presence for her music. "I already told half my friends to come tonight," Tommy continued, grabbing an apron. "No backing out now." "Just half?" Lisa teased. "The other half couldn't afford dinner here," Tommy said pragmatically. "But they'll watch the videos I post." Those videos had been an unexpected development. What started as Tommy's way of helping his mother practice had turned into something of a minor sensation among Bellini's regulars. Clips of Lisa playing classical pieces and jazz standards had found a small but appreciative audience online. Not viral fame, but enough that Mr. Carvello had noticed an uptick in reservations on nights when Lisa performed. "How was school?" Lisa asked, handing Tommy a stack of menus to wipe down. "Same as usual. Got an A on that history paper." He hesitated before adding, "Mrs. Reynolds asked about you. Said she's coming tonight with her husband." "My old piano teacher is coming?" Lisa felt a flutter of nerves. "You might have mentioned that sooner. Wanted to tell you in person to see that exact look on your face," Tommy grinned. "She saw one of my videos and messaged me. Said she always knew you had it in you." Lisa remembered Mrs. Reynolds, strict but kind, pushing a young Lisa to reach beyond what she thought possible. She had been disappointed when Lisa left music school but had never made her feel guilty about the choice. As they prepared for the evening, Lisa's mind drifted to the other changes in her life. She still waited tables 4 days a week. The stability and regular income were important, but the piano nights had added something essential back into her life. And the tips on those nights were substantially better, which helped with the mounting college expenses looming in Tommy's future. Blackwood had kept his word about making introductions. Last month, Lisa had played at a charity fundraiser, a paid gig that had led to 2 more bookings. Small steps, but in a direction she hadn't allowed herself to consider for years. The restaurant began to fill as 6 o'clock approached. Regular customers who knew to request tables on piano nights, newcomers drawn by the increasingly positive online reviews, and, as Lisa spotted with a smile, Mrs. Reynolds and her husband being shown to a table near the piano. At 7, Lisa slipped into Mr. Carvello's office to change. The black dress was simple but elegant, a gift from the restaurant staff after her first month of regular performances. As she fastened the pearl earrings that had been her mother's, Lisa caught her reflection in the small mirror on the wall. She looked different somehow. Not younger exactly, but more present, more herself. When she emerged, the dining room was nearly full. Tommy gave her a thumbs up from where he was helping serve bread baskets. Mr. Carvello nodded approvingly. And Mrs. Reynolds, her former teacher, beamed with undisguised pride. Lisa settled at the piano, adjusting the bench as she always did. The familiar ritual calmed her nerves. She began with Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece that had started it all that night 3 months ago. Her fingers found the keys without hesitation, muscle memory and renewed practice coming together in fluid motion. As she played, Lisa allowed herself to really look at how much had changed. Not just the external circumstances of her life, but something deeper. She had reclaimed a part of herself that she had tucked away for safekeeping all those years ago. Not quite the same as it had been in her youth, but perhaps richer, more nuanced by the life she had lived in between. The applause after her first piece brought her back to the present. She acknowledged it with a smile before moving into a set of familiar classics and jazz standards. The restaurant hummed with conversation beneath her playing, exactly as it should. Her music was accompaniment to their evenings, not the main event. Yet she noticed many diners pausing their conversations to listen during particularly moving passages. After an hour, Lisa took a short break, stopping by Mrs. Reynolds' table. "You play beautifully, Lisa," her former teacher said, clasping her hand. "More beautifully than ever." "Thank you," Lisa replied, genuinely touched. "That means a lot, especially tonight." Mrs. Reynolds tilted her head questioningly. "I'm playing some of my own compositions in the next set," Lisa explained. "First time ever." "Ah," Mrs. Reynolds nodded knowingly. "I always thought you had it in you to compose. You understood music, not just played it." When Lisa returned to the piano after her break, she felt a different kind of nervousness. Playing other people's music was one thing. Even if she missed a note or fumbled a passage, the beauty of the composition remained. But playing her own creations felt like exposing something deeply personal. She took a deep breath and looked around the room. Tommy stood at the back, giving her an encouraging nod. Mr. Carvello watched expectantly from near the kitchen, and scattered throughout the dining room were faces that had become familiar over the past months. People who came specifically on nights when she played, who had begun to request favorite pieces, who sometimes lingered after their meals just to listen. "The next piece is something I wrote recently," Lisa announced, surprised at the steadiness in her voice. "It's called Detours." Her composition began softly, tentatively, notes questioning, searching. It built gradually, incorporating fragments of classical themes before veering unexpectedly into jazz-influenced rhythms. The piece reflected her journey, the classical training of her youth, the unexpected turns her life had taken, the rediscovery of her passion. It wasn't technically perfect, but it was honest. As the final notes faded, the restaurant fell silent for a moment before erupting in the warmest applause she'd yet received. Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a fear she hadn't fully acknowledged until it was gone. They had listened. They had understood. She played 2 more original pieces, each telling a different part of her story. Tommy's Lullaby, composed during those sleepless nights when he was an infant and she was a young mother alone with her fears. November Rain, written after her mother's passing, full of both grief and gratitude. By the time she finished her final piece, Lisa felt wrung out but peaceful. The vulnerability of sharing her compositions had been terrifying but liberating. This was who she was, not just a pianist interpreting others' work, but an artist with something of her own to say. As the evening wound down, Tommy brought her a glass of water. "They loved it, Mom. Especially Mrs. Reynolds. Did you see her?" "Crying during November Rain?" Lisa nodded, too emotional to speak for a moment. "It feels right, Tommy," she finally said. "Like I found my way back to myself." "You never lost yourself," Tommy said with surprising wisdom. "You just put some parts on hold while you were busy being my mom." Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. "Being your mom is the best thing I've ever done." "Better than Rachmaninoff?" Tommy teased. "Way better," she assured him. "But it's nice to have both." As they began closing up for the night, Lisa noticed a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Blackwood, alone this time, looking slightly out of place in the nearly empty dining room. "We're actually closed," Tommy said, immediately protective. "It's okay," Lisa assured him. "I know him." Blackwood approached hesitantly. "I hope you don't mind. I was in town for a meeting and heard you might be playing tonight." "You just missed the last set," Lisa said. "Actually, I heard most of it. I've been outside for a while, just listening." He looked different from the arrogant man who had mocked her months ago, humbler somehow, more human. "Your compositions are beautiful, especially the last one." "Thank you," Lisa said, genuinely touched. "I meant what I said before about connections," Blackwood continued. "There's a small recording studio that specializes in independent artists. The owner is a friend of mine. He's interested in your work, piano compositions for film scores, that kind of thing." Lisa felt a flutter of both excitement and hesitation. "I have a job here, and Tommy's about to start college applications." "It wouldn't be full-time," Blackwood clarified. "Just recording sessions when you're available, and they pay well." Tommy, who had been pretending not to listen while wiping down a nearby table, could no longer contain himself. "You should do it, Mom." Lisa looked at her son, the reason she had set aside her dreams all those years ago, and now the reason she was finding her way back to them. "We'll see," she said, not a dismissal but a genuine consideration. Later, as they walked home through the quiet streets, Tommy carrying her change of clothes in his backpack, Lisa felt a profound sense of contentment. Her life hadn't turned out the way she'd planned as a young Juilliard student with dreams of concert halls. It had taken detours she never expected, but those detours had given her Tommy, had shaped her into the person she was now, had perhaps even deepened her music in ways that might not have happened otherwise. And now somehow the circle was completing itself, bringing her back to music not as a return to the past, but as a step into a new future. "What are you thinking about?" Tommy asked, noticing her smile. "Just that sometimes the longest detours lead exactly where you're meant to be," Lisa replied, "even if it's not where you originally thought you were going." Tommy nodded, understanding beyond his years. "I'm really proud of you, Mom, not just for the music but for everything." Lisa put her arm around her son's shoulders, having to reach up now that he was taller than her. "I'm proud of us, Tommy. We make a pretty good team." As they turned the corner toward their apartment building, Lisa found herself already composing a new piece in her mind, something about beginnings that come after you think all your chances have passed, and about the unexpected beauty found along the way.